Good evening and welcome to another monthly edition of Conservative Corner, based here at New TV at the New TV studios in Newton, Massachusetts. I'm your host, Tom Mountain, and we are a monthly show based in Newton and the surrounding area, which more or less focuses on issues that you may not hear in your respective communities. For example, we deal with issues from, shall we say, the conservative Republican point of view. And we dive into these issues, we tackle them, we bring them forward, and especially in the absence of a local newspaper, community newspaper, we feel that we need to have more of a voice for those who, shall we say, do not adhere to the liberal ideology, the far left ideology, in or around Newton. So we try to present those issues to you. Tonight we have, this is not a liberal conservative issue, this is an issue of a humanitarian issue, so to speak. And this deals with history, this deals with us, this deals with what has happened in the past half century or more, going back to World War II. And of course, this is dealing specifically with the Holocaust. The Holocaust Memorial Day, which is Yom HaShoah, just happened recently within the past few weeks. And the Holocaust is a topic that is near and dear to those of us in Newton and the surrounding area, mainly because there were so many Holocaust survivors in and around Newton, and there were also many liberators of the camps in Europe, in Germany primarily, living and residing here. And I have a very special guest here tonight, and he is going to touch on a theme that he briefly mentioned last fall, I believe. And this deals with preserving the legacy of the Holocaust. And by legacy, I mean keeping the memory and the alive of what happened during the Holocaust to the European Jews and to their survivors, many of whom are here with us today in and around the Boston area. And certainly their children and grandchildren are here. And our guest is Dr. Stephen Gerzoff. And he divides his time between Newton and South Florida. And he came upon something which was very important, and that was something called the cattle car experience. And what that is it's a cattle car is when the Germans took away the Jews and other ethnic groups as well, Romas especially, the Gypsies, what they would do is they had a very extensive network throughout Europe, and they would put them on essentially cattle cars, the same type of cars that you see roaming around the United States taking cattle to the slaughter, quite frankly. These cars in Europe took the Jews to the slaughter, to the death camps, primarily in Poland and Lithuania. So Dr. Gerzoff came upon one at Florida Atlantic University, and it was a display of a cattle car with a slide presentation of what the Jews experience on these cars. And it was a true-to-life version of it. And he came up with the idea of transporting this and sending this to the Northeast out of Florida. And the reason for this is severalfold, but primarily to educate the young people, primarily high school students who are theoretically mature enough to handle this, to educate them on the Holocaust rather than have just, for example, a teacher standing in front of a classroom and telling them about the Holocaust. Now these students can walk into a cattle car, see a slide presentation, and hear and feel what it was like to be transported on one of these. And there's nothing like having a hands-on experience in dealing with this. It's like living history. It really is. Regretfully, the time has elapsed where there are actual Holocaust survivors who are there to instruct the students as to what happened. But there are certainly guides to bring them through that. And with the premise that once you go through it and spend a few minutes there, you'll at least, if you've heard nothing about the Holocaust or very little about the Holocaust, you'll at least hear and understand what the Holocaust was about. And especially with today's generation, and I'm not saying that I'm a senior citizen, nor is Dr. Gerzoff, but we can remember a time when we were in high school that the Holocaust was really a basic part of the curriculum, that you understood whether you went to private parochial schools, public schools, you understood what the Holocaust was, why it happened, and who it happened to. and that, of course, is primarily the Jews. Unfortunately, we're not confident, and I think surveys have indicated that too many students do not know what the Holocaust is or was, and the unfortunate legacy that it still carries with us today. And as a famous philosopher, Santayana, once said, those who fail to remember history are doomed to repeat it. So with that in mind, Dr. Gersoff decided to really go head first into this to try to keep the legacy of the Holocaust alive. I had, over the past decade and a half, until his death a few years ago, became very close with Dr. Steve Ross, who was the founder of the New England Holocaust Memorial in Boston. And I listened to him and learned through him, and was present with him and hosted him at a number of functions, from anywhere from 50 people to literally over 500 people. But he was a survivor who would keep the generation alive, who would keep the legacy alive. Now we're on the second or third generation, and Dr. Gersoff has a very unique legacy in his own family. He himself is the second generation, or first or second generation survivor? Cousins, second. Okay. He had family that not only perished in the Holocaust, but they were actually in the partisan units in Eastern Europe in the Holocaust. And they were the ones who fought back, who were able to fight back against the Germans. They were with the very famous partisan unit of Jews called the Bolesky brothers. And if you haven't seen the movie, you should. And the name of the movie is?
Defiance.
Defiance. You should really see that movie, then you'll really understand how the Jews dealt with it and how they were able to fight back. And carrying through with that legacy of his own family, Dr. Gersoff volunteered for and was instrumental. He went to Israel during the Yom Kippur War, which, as many of you will recall, in 1973, Israel was virtually on the verge of extinction, and they came very close to losing their country with the onslaught that came upon them, and for which the Israeli government, the military, decorated him with a pin in which he wears on his lapel. So what he's doing is very important, very sacred, and it's very important to our future and the future of our children and grandchildren. This cattle car is and will be soon in Newton, Mass, and it's going to be at Newton City Hall. And an issue arose, and it's an issue which we're puzzled about, and quite frankly, I'm a bit disconcerted about. And that is, this cattle car experience has, it's been through 66 high schools throughout the Eastern Seaboard, and any number of colleges as well. And it was proposed to the Newton School Administration to bring it to the Newton high schools. They said no. They said no, they're not going to have it. And despite the fact that one of their reasons was that Newton had too many children and grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, and they'll be traumatized by it. Yes, yet this is also going into Brookline and Marblehead High, which also has a lot of Jews, a lot of people with a similar background. So that's a bit disturbing to me, Doctor. I don't quite understand what's going on here. Would you like to further elaborate on that just for a minute or two?
Well, I can't speak for the Newton teachers, but it struck me as problematic because it's already been seen by 60,000 students. It was designed actually by a high school student herself as a senior project. It's an exact replica of the cattle cars used to transport Jews from ghettos to the concentration camps. When you walk inside, you see footprints, or stenciled footprints, of 100 sets, which is the number of people they could pack in, be they Jews or anti-Nazi people or Roma gypsies. And you get the sense you are 70 years back in time. You're not claustrophobic because you can see through the slats. Since it was designed for cattle, air had to come through. In the ceiling is the audiovisual equipment, and it's not just slides. It's the sounds of the voiceover. It's the moving videos that you see. But it uses the Holocaust as a a metaphor for what's happening in our society today. What happens when anti-Semitism, when hatred goes unchecked, and it leads up to bullying on the playground, or getting students involved in speaking up instead of just sitting down. For the teachers, I don't understand why they were worried about emotional trauma to the students at the high school, but it was okay if they sent the students either walking from Newton North High School to City Hall, the War Memorial, which is behind City Hall, or busing them from Newton South. It seemed an unnecessary danger and expense when it was actually designed to be right on campus. Walk in, walk out. It comes with a driver, two docents to explain and give lectures before, deprogram or help students if they do have any questions, they can answer the questions. But what puzzled me most was an email I got from the superintendent of schools, which said, as we have discussed in previous emails, it is our wish in the Newton Public Schools, after conferring with school leadership and high school department heads, that the cattle car experience be at a neutral city location where we can arrange to bring designated classes to experience this educational program. A long sentence, but the word neutral. Why would they not consider our schools neutral? If there's any part of the city I would want neutral, it would be the schools. And so that bothered me. I just didn't understand it, so I can't speak for them.
Well, you should be bothered by it, and many people should be bothered by it, and the question remains, why wouldn't they bring it to the schools? And, and it shouldn't be a Jewish issue or whatever, in that there are too many Jewish students, theoretically, that are the descendants of survivors. This is going to St. John's Catholic Preparatory School in Danvers later on this month, as I understand it. So this is going to schools, to very prestigious schools in the Boston area, and and the reality is that this is living history. It's sort of like, with a crude analysis, going to Sturbridge Village. Well, to go to Sturbridge Village to see early Americana, you have to go there. But this is something which is being brought to us. This is something which, if you're at the schools, the high schools, then you can walk out and see it, and you will experience it. So, in other words, where you have several hundred students at each high school, where most of them, probably the vast majority, over 90% of them, would go through it at one point or another, chances are they probably won't, because, again, it's from Newton South. It's far away in Newton Center, and then from Newton Center, from Newton North, it's about a half-hour walk, as you say. And that's unfortunate. And I wonder if these administrators and teachers really, quite frankly, know what they're doing in this. And I wonder if there's not another reason why they chose to keep it out of the schools.
I don't know.
This is unfortunate.
I'm a teacher myself. I've been a professor of radiology at Tufts Medical School, and I spent my entire VA career teaching. I know that getting kids' attention, getting them away today from their cell phones is something that is very difficult. Yes. When I saw this at the Florida Atlantic University last year, I saw these students were mesmerized. What I later wrote about it was, no one laughed, no one cried, no one texted, no one tweeted, no one slouched, no one slept. And when they walked out almost reverently, silently, because of their experience. My wife took my arm and said, Steve, we've got to bring this to Newton. And so we have. It is the most amazing experience for kids to be in this period piece of 70 years ago. They all know it's safe. They all can see out through the slats. The light is coming in. It's air conditioned. There's a motor humming. They're with their best friends. When we asked kids from Holocaust families in Florida how they felt about it, they felt even more comfortable because they were with their classmates and realized now that their classmates knew the kind of experience their families, the Holocaust survivor families, had been through. My cousins, survivor family kids, had to sometimes take care of their parents. When someone with a uniform, like a ticket collector in a train, they would start to almost tremble with fear because of their experiences having fought against this for 4 years, sometimes underground with the partisans. They were serious fighters. They dynamited German troop trains.
This is a very unique experience, and as you present, it has been through so many different high schools and colleges on the Eastern Seaboard, and and it's here in the Boston area, and it will be going to several different areas. And what's most impressive, which you told me earlier, is that this is currently being hosted by the Harvard Hillel organization, a Jewish organization at Harvard. And it's physically in Harvard Yard in front of the Widener Library, which to me, which is really extraordinary that Harvard would do that.
I thought it was fabulous. Right in front of the Widener Library, one of the most
really
prestigious libraries, it was set up, and there were hundreds of people going in,
That's amazing.
hearing it.
It's really amazing, Stephen, and I give you all the credit in the world and to your colleagues for getting it in there, quite frankly. It's really stunning. You know, bear in mind, we can go back to just 70 years to the era of our grandparents when Jews weren't allowed at Harvard. I mean, not only Jews, but blacks and Catholics as well. And there it is, right at Harvard, and still, it's right in the center of the most important university in the Western world, in the Western Hemisphere, quite frankly. So it's really extraordinary that it's going there. And again, I can't stress enough the importance of it, not just for it going to the schools where there's a lot of Jewish students, but also to a place like an elite Catholic high school like St. John's Prep. And I hope that it will get an extensive viewing in other and other private and parochial schools as well. But you know, when people see this and go into the cattle car, to your point, that they will experience what millions upon millions of Jews and others through World War II had to experience, and 6 million of whom among the Jews, this was really basically their last ride, because they were brought to the death camps in Poland and Lithuania, Treblinka, Majdanek, and Auschwitz, et cetera, Sobibor, and that was where they were exterminated. So, and the important thing is...
While that is factually true,
yeah.
This is written specifically for teenagers and high school and college students. The age-appropriate language
yeah.
is to that group. The imagery, the videos that show on the inside. The students actually glom themselves together to get a better view, and they're in contact with each other, feeling safe. So it doesn't have that feeling of terror or horror.
Yes.
We as adults should know that. Most of us do.
Yeah, I think the important thing to know is that or to realize is that if they have minimal or no knowledge of the Holocaust, after seeing this presentation, however long it takes, how long does it take?
It's 20 minutes.
20 minutes. After seeing this presentation, they will have a knowledge of it. And so this will lead to further inquiry and questioning and searching, shall we say, on this topic of the Holocaust. And, you know, the significance of this in particular is that the German Nazis were so well organized with their allies throughout Europe to literally bring the Jews through every corner of Europe to these extermination centers to be killed. And some of these people were on these trains literally for days, weeks at a time, literally weeks at a time.
I happen to know the record is from southern Greece. It was 14 days that they were in the cattle car. They're getting to Auschwitz. The reason they chose Auschwitz was because it was at a railroad junction. They decided they would use railroads. Yes. There were actually 44,000 collection points, not actual ghettos, but prison-type structures that they started collecting the Jews at. We know about the major ghettos like the Warsaw Ghetto or the Lodz Ghetto, but there were actually 44,000. This was a whole industry.
You know, just as an aside, Steve, you mentioned southern Greece. Actually, they came from also the Greek islands, from
yes.
Rhodes off the coast of Turkey. They actually would put them on ships and then transport them to the ports in Greece onto cattle cars, then bring them to Auschwitz without food and water. So weeks and a month later, half of them were either dead or dying anyway.
Yes.
So, but the point is that the Germans were so obsessed with killing all the Jews in Europe and the surrounding areas, even as far as North Africa, that they would actually divert from their war effort against the Western Allies, the U.S.
Exactly.
and the Soviet Union, and in order to just kill as many Jews as possible, and they almost did. They almost did, and this whole presentation is really symbolic of that. And you know, now we're in the 21st century, and certainly the last Holocaust survivors and World War II veterans who liberated them are fading, and within a
Yep.
decade they'll be gone. And it's similar to maybe when we were younger and the last people from the World War I, or even before that, the Spanish-American War, were just dying, and they're fading into memory. So it's important to literally keep this legacy alive for several reasons, but the foremost of which is that you can't let it happen again, because it did happen before. And this was a unique, despite all the victims or victimology that we're hearing in today's society, in today's world, and certainly in the public schools, the Holocaust was unique in that it was the systematic extermination of a whole people. And it wasn't slavery, it wasn't oppression, it was actual murder. Now, for example, we can talk about the legacy of black slavery in America. And that was very unfortunate, that was very harsh. But the goal of the slavers was not the extermination, the murder of the slaves. The goal was to keep them as slaves. During the Holocaust, the Jews wanted to be slaves in an odd way. Why? Because they were kept alive. They wanted to be the ones to work in the munition plants, to work in the fields, because they were kept alive. But that wasn't the goal of the Germans. The goal of the Germans was to kill the Jews. So in other words, what I'm getting at is there's a lot of cultural or historical relativism here. That,
Yes.
you know, where they talk about the legacy of slavery. Yes, it was, but the legacy of slavery was not murder and extermination. It was slavery. The legacy of the Holocaust was murder and extermination. So it's infinitely worse, and it stands alone, than any other such travesty, shall we say, in history, and
Yeah.
certainly in modern history.
The word genocide itself was made up by a Polish attorney, Raoul Lemkin, to describe the Holocaust. The intent was literally extermination. But the purpose of this cattle car is to teach kids, high school and college kids, what happens when you let this kind of crazy hatred or political strife go unchecked. The ultimate end is not just canceling someone's speech, but canceling their lives. And there have been other genocides since then that have gone on around the world. But this is the, as you say, the singular one where it was industrialized and the intent was to destroy an entire population.
You know, and people will compare, for example, the Pol Pot genocide of their own people, Cambodians, during the 1970s. But again, that wasn't an intentional extermination of their own people. Millions were killed, but it wasn't an intentional extermination. Many of them survived, and you know, and I know I'm trying to. People are going to take issue with what I've just said, but again, the Holocaust is unique in that it was specifically targeted towards the Jews and others as well that came along with, like the Gypsies.
Yeah,
and
there was
whatnot.
6 million Jews, 250,000 Gypsies, 500 blacks were sterilized, 1,900 Jehovah's Witnesses
Yes.
were murdered, numerous, I mean hundreds of Catholic priests who did speak up. We
Yes.
have the Bonhoeffer quote, "There was no one left to speak for me," because he
Of
hadn't
course.
spoken up. And the last quote inside the cattle car is a picture of Anne Frank with a quote that says, "How wonderful it is that no one need wait a single moment before starting to improve this world." And that's the message of hope that it has for kids today. There are posters, or I should say slides, of examples of standing up. Do we believe this? Who's in charge? What can I do to fix things? It's very empowering towards the end. It uses the Holocaust only for the first 10 or
Certainly
12
is,
minutes.
But you know, also, if and I certainly don't want to doubt the school administrators who say that they don't believe that the children are emotionally prepared for seeing this. To see a presentation on the Holocaust, and my interpretation of this, as is yours, I'm sure, is that students who are teenagers, I mean, they're not children. They're teenagers, and within a few years, a year or two, they're going to be leaving high school. They're going to be legal adults who can vote. So they can handle something like this. They can handle lessons on the Holocaust and handle going into a cattle car to see how people were killed and murdered and whatnot.
I agree with you. As a parent and grandparent, I believe that the role of the schools is to prepare the kids at this level, not to protect them from reality. Reality is what happens when you're not prepared. If anything, this is the opposite.
Steve, tell us, we have 2 minutes left. Tell us when and where this will be in Newton.
In Newton, it will be at the Newton War Memorial, which is the backside of City Hall.
At City Hall.
It will be set up there. On Friday, it's designated specifically for students from Newton South. On Monday, this coming, so it's from the 28th to May 1st, I believe. Monday will be the students walking unless they manage to transport them by buses. And then on the weekend, it's for the general population. I'm not sure what hour it's starting, probably at noontime till 8 o'clock.
Then after that, it's going to leave Newton and go where? Do you know?
From there, it goes to...
Well, it's going to other high schools and area.
To St. John's Prep, then Marblehead High School, Brookline High School, Swampscott High School.
That's wonderful.
And this past Wednesday, it was in New York City in Times Square.
Oh, God.
This is getting
That's
a huge
really
press.
wonderful. It really is. Steve, you're doing such important work. You really are, and you're carrying on the legacy of your forefathers and of those, and memorializing those who are not here to speak about the Holocaust.
Well,
So
as
thank
I
you for that.
excuse myself, I say I was in the right place at the right time with the right stuff, and I just did the right thing.
Yes, you certainly did. I'd like to mention something, or rather someone who passed away recently, and that was George Withington, who was a lifelong Republican, member of the Newton Republican City Committee, and one of the founders of the Proposition 2.5, for which you and the rest of us have been able to save hundreds of thousands of dollars on our property taxes. George died in his late 80s this past month. He will be missed. We miss him a great deal, and we thank him for his service to our community and to our Republican Party. Thank you, George.